Welcome to Intelligence and Spirituality, a groundbreaking podcast that explores the intersection of spiritual health and artificial intelligence. Our mission is to provide personalized emotional support, stress analysis, and self-exploration programs to help you achieve inner peace and spiritual growth. Stay updated on our latest episodes by subscribing now. In today's episode, we'll cover the brain's different modes, including the default mode network and the energy-saving mode, and how they affect our cognitive abilities, as well as the use of heuristics for quick decision-making and their limitations and biases. Additionally, we'll explore the link between DMN and neuro-psychiatric disorders, as well as the effective heuristics and 15 common heuristics in psychology. Have you ever wondered whether your brain is ever on a break? Well, it turns out that even when you're not doing anything in particular, your brain is still hard at work, just in a more relaxed state. This relaxed mode is called the default mode network, or DMN for short. What exactly happens in this DMN mode, you ask? Your brain engages in internal thinking activities such as introspection, self-reflection, memory recall, and imagination. It's important to note that this doesn't mean that your brain is turned off completely. Rather, it's organizing itself and preparing for future tasks while consolidating memories. Although this default mode is seen as an energy-saving mode, it's essential to realize that too much of it can lead to negative emotions and lack of concentration. It's necessary to switch from the default mode when focus or more complex tasks are needed to be accomplished. To ensure proper brain function, our brains often switch between different modes, including the default mode network, depending on various cognitive demands, while ensuring normal operation with energy consumption levels we can handle. Have you ever felt like your brain just needs a break? Like you're not in the mood for complex tasks that require great amounts of thinking? Well, that's because sometimes our brains enter a state called energy-saving mode. This typically happens when we're resting, not in need of high-level thinking, or simply relaxing. In energy-saving mode, the brain reduces energy consumption and cognitive activity. So when you're feeling tired or lack motivation, your brain may avoid complex tasks and engage in simple automated activities, like when you're doing mundane work or following the same daily routines. But wait, there's more. Even though the brain may be in this energy-saving mode, it still has incredible adaptability and potential. That means when we're faced with challenges or need to think deeply, the brain can quickly switch to a higher level of cognitive activity. Pretty cool, right? It's important to note that while the brain may enter this energy-saving mode at times, we shouldn't let ourselves go completely. It's crucial to exercise our brains by challenging them with new skills, solving problems, and engaging in stimulating activities. By doing so, we can stimulate our brain's potential and improve their performance levels, all while maintaining physical health. So, let's put our brains to work. Have you ever wondered what happens to your brain when you're not actively engaged in a task? Well, it turns out that the brain actually has a specific neural network pattern called the default mode network, DMN, that kicks in during rest periods, introspection, and other moments when we're not focused on specific cognitive tasks. DMN is essentially a pattern of connectivity and interaction between different regions of the brain that are less active during task performance and more active during rest. This network includes multiple brain regions, such as the medial prefrontal cortex, MPFC, posterior cingulate cortex, PCC, and internal parts of the lateral parietal system, along with other areas in the temporal and frontal lobes. So, what does DMN activity mean for our psychological processes? Well, it's been associated with a variety of cognitive functions, such as introspection, self-reflection, emotion regulation, social cognition, and self-awareness. It helps us think about ourselves, recall past events, plan for the future, and understand other people's mental states. Interestingly, DMN activation actually strengthens connectivity between these brain regions, forming a network that can improve cognitive processes like self-awareness, memory consolidation, and creative thinking. At the same time, DMN activity also helps filter external stimuli and regulate internal attention. While DMN is most active during rest periods, it doesn't completely shut down during other tasks. Sometimes DMN activity may be suppressed by other attention networks, such as prefrontal cortical networks or dorsal attention networks. Researchers have studied DMN extensively to understand its role in cognitive function, neuropsychiatric disorders, and consciousness research. Abnormal DMN activity has been linked to a variety of disorders, such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, depression, autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and Alzheimer's disease. In summary, DMN is an important brain activity pattern related to psychological processes like introspection, self-reflection, emotion regulation, and self-awareness. Understanding the function and activity of DMN is crucial for understanding cognitive processes and changes related to neuropsychiatric disorders. Today, we're going to dive into a fascinating topic that might just shed some light on the root causes of depression, insomnia, and anxiety. Studies have found that the default mode network, DMN, a group of interconnected brain regions that work together when we're not focused on the outside world, is associated with mental health issues. Let's start with depression. Researchers have found that the activity pattern of the DMN in depressed patients is often different from that of normal individuals. The DMN tends to increase in activity during rest for those suffering from depression, while its inhibitory ability is weaker during cognitive tasks. This abnormal pattern of DMN activity is linked to symptoms like self-reflection, negative thinking, and self-focus in depressed individuals. Moving on to insomnia, you might be interested to learn that it's related to abnormalities in the functional connectivity of DMN. Studies have found that the functional connectivity of DMN is stronger during rest in patients with insomnia, which can lead to excessive introspection and thinking activities that affect sleep quality. Finally, let's talk about anxiety. It turns out that the activity of DMN increases during rest for individuals with anxiety disorder. This is connected to their excessive self-focus, negative thinking, and worry. Abnormal activity patterns can lead to excessive introspection and self-awareness, making anxiety more prominent. Now, it's important to note that while DMN is definitely linked to these mental health problems, abnormal activity patterns aren't necessarily the sole cause. These issues are complex and have multiple factors, including genetic, environmental, and neurochemical factors. That being said, understanding the role played by the DMN can certainly help us gain deeper insights into the neural mechanisms underlying these diseases and provide new directions for future treatments and interventions. With further research, we may be able to unlock the key to unlocking long-term solutions to these debilitating conditions. Hey there. Today, we are going to talk about how our brain works when we need to make quick decisions. The thing is, when our brain is not in an energy-saving mode, it can sometimes use heuristic methods to process information and come up with solutions. What are heuristic methods, you might ask? They are basically simple, streamlined ways of thinking that can help us make snap decisions without needing to use too much brain power. Now, don't get me wrong, heuristic methods can be super helpful in certain situations. For instance, if we need to make a fast decision with limited time and resources, using a heuristic method can help us quickly come up with a reasonable solution. Some heuristic methods are based on our past experiences, intuition, rules, or even pattern recognition. For example, if we're faced with a decision we've faced before, we may tend to rely on our past experiences and adopt similar successful strategies. However, using heuristic methods can also have a downside. They don't always lead us to the best solutions, especially in more complex or unfamiliar situations. There are times when we need to take a step back and use deeper thinking and analysis to avoid making poor choices. So, the next time you find yourself needing to make a quick decision, remember that your brain might be using heuristic methods to help you. And while they can be super useful in some circumstances, it's important to be aware of their limitations and to take a more cautious approach when needed. Hey there! Today we're going to talk about heuristics, a psychological strategy that can help us make decisions or solve problems efficiently. Essentially, heuristics are simplified rules or experiential decision-making methods that we use when we're faced with complex situations and limited information. Using heuristics allows us to save cognitive resources and time, making it a popular choice for decision-making in our daily lives. However, relying too heavily on heuristics can sometimes lead to bias and erroneous judgments. This is because heuristics might overlook important information or contexts that could be crucial to making the right decision. There are a few common heuristics that people use, one being the representative heuristic. This involves making judgments based on the similarity or representative features of things. For example, if a person looks and behaves like a doctor based on typical stereotypes, we might assume they are a doctor without any further context. Another heuristic is the availability heuristic, in which we make judgments based on the availability of information in our memories. If something is more easily accessible in our minds, we tend to believe it is more common or likely to occur. Lastly, there is the adjustment heuristic. This heuristic strategy is used to correct biases and erroneous judgments that may have been made using other heuristics in order to gain more accurate conclusions. While heuristics can definitely be useful in certain situations, it's important to note that they can also lead to systematic errors or incorrect judgments under certain circumstances. Therefore, it's crucial that we're aware of the limitations of heuristics and combine other strategies with comprehensive information when making critical decisions or solving complex problems. Have you ever made a quick decision based on how you felt about something or someone? If so, you've used a type of heuristic method called affective heuristic. Essentially, affective heuristics are a simplified cognitive strategy used to avoid tedious information processing and analysis. In other words, when you face a complex decision, your emotions can influence your judgment and choices. If you have a positive emotional reaction to something, you may consider it good and valuable. Conversely, if you have a negative emotional reaction, you might see it as not worth your time or effort. But there's a catch. Emotional responses are not always consistent with objective facts or true values, which is one of the limitations of affective heuristics. Emotional biases can lead to incorrect decisions and negatively impact your life. There are several factors that can influence affective heuristics, such as environmental influences, personal experiences, and even emotional fluctuations. So, how do we use affective heuristics appropriately? Well, in complex decision-making situations, rational thinking and comprehensive evaluation are more reliable. However, in some cases, affective heuristics can be a helpful tool when time and cognitive resources are limited. It's important to be aware of the existence of affective heuristics and use them appropriately in appropriate situations while being vigilant about possible emotional biases and erroneous judgments. Ultimately, our emotions play a significant role in our decision-making process, and understanding how they can influence us can help us make more informed choices. Have you heard of heuristic methods before? They're what we call shortcuts or mental shortcuts. These methods provide a fast and straightforward way of processing information and making decisions without the need for thorough analysis or calculation. They're incredibly useful when we're short on time and resources, allowing us to make quick judgments without going through an exhaustive thought process. But there's a catch. Heuristic methods can sometimes introduce biases or lead to erroneous decisions. Because they're often based on simplified rules or experience, they might overlook some key information or considerations, resulting in inaccurate or suboptimal outcomes. It's important to be aware of these potential problems when using heuristic methods. We have to carefully weigh the advantages and limitations of heuristic methods and be mindful of possible biases or errors. In situations where we need more accuracy or deeper thinking, adopting more systematic and comprehensive analytical approaches might be necessary. This approach can help us avoid potential problems caused by shortcuts. When we talk about heuristics in psychology, we often refer to mental shortcuts or rules of thumb that humans naturally use to simplify decision-making processes. While the affective heuristic tends to come to mind first, there are many other common heuristics out there that we use on a daily basis. In fact, there are 15 more that are worth discussing. The first one is the representativeness heuristic. This is when we make judgments based on similarities or representative features. For example, if we meet someone who reminds us of someone else, we might assume that they share similar traits and values. Next up is the availability heuristic. This one is all about making judgments based on the information that's most available to us in our memory. For instance, if we hear lots of stories about shark attacks, we might be more afraid of sharks than other animals, even if the statistics don't support it. Then we have the adjustment heuristic, which involves refining our initial judgments in order to arrive at more accurate conclusions. This is especially useful when we don't have all the information we need to make a decision. Another important heuristic is the simplification heuristic. This one is all about breaking down complex problems and simplifying them into more manageable forms, which helps us focus our attention and make better decisions. The assessment heuristic is another important one. This involves evaluating objects, people, or situations based on obvious characteristics or standards. For example, when we're shopping for a car, we might choose one based on its appearance or reputation. The fast and frugal heuristic is a very practical one. It involves using simple rules or methods for quick decision-making, often with limited resources. We often use this when we have to make decisions rapidly, like in emergencies. Induction is another useful heuristic. This one involves inferring from partial information in order to make generalizations about a whole. For example, if we try a new food and we don't like it, we might assume we won't like similar foods as well, even if we haven't tried them yet. Then we have the affectors information heuristic, which is all about evaluating or deciding based on our current emotional state. This one can be tricky, as our emotions may not always reflect reality accurately. The social proof heuristic is another important one. This involves making judgments based on the behavior or opinions of others. For example, if we hear many people talking about a certain product, we might assume it's good without doing much research. Next up is the attributional heuristic, which involves making judgments by attributing events to their causes. For example, if we see someone fall down the stairs, we might assume they're clumsy without considering other factors. The compliance heuristic is another important one. This one involves making decisions under social pressure and authority. For example, if an authority figure tells us to do something, we might do it even if we don't feel comfortable. Then we have the simulation heuristic, which involves evaluating possible outcomes by simulating potential events and situations. This is especially useful when we need to make decisions about the future and weigh different possibilities. The consistency heuristic is another important one. This one involves making decisions based on consistency and similarity. For example, if we always buy the same brand of coffee, we might assume it's the best without trying other options. The automation heuristic is another useful one. This involves using past experiences and automated responses to make decisions. For example, if we've always celebrated our birthday a certain way, we might continue doing so without considering other options. Finally, we have the labeling heuristic. This involves making judgments according to labels or categories. For example, if we see that a product is labeled organic, we might assume it's good without doing much research. While these heuristics can simplify decision-making processes across different contexts, they can also lead to systematic errors and biases. Therefore, careful consideration should be given along with other strategies and information when making critical decisions. On today's episode, we explored the brain's default mode network and its impact on our cognitive abilities, discussed the importance of challenge to maintain brain health, and delved into heuristics and their benefits and limitations in decision-making, reminding us to be cautious and thorough in our approach. Thanks for listening to today's episode. I'll see you guys at the next one, and don't forget to subscribe.